Radio.
We're back. It's another episode of Svelte Radio. Yay!
Yay!
It's the usual hosts, but we also have another guest. Li Hau is back to talk about Svelte, maintaining Svelte, contributing to Svelte, and also his new YouTube channel. Well, maybe it's not so new now, but you've been working on it for a while. Yeah. So I guess let's get started. What have you been up to since the last time you were on? Must have been a long time ago, like 1 year ago or something.
You mean me?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So since the last time, I've been working on my YouTube channel. I've made like a ton of contents about Svelte, especially on the Svelte tutorials. And then actually there's most of the things that I've been doing. And apart from work, really like I think work has pick up a lot of works right now. So juggling with like works and YouTube channel and maybe like a little bit of maintaining Svelte kind of things. It's like most of my schedules right now.
Yeah. So you're still at was it Shopee?
Yep, Shopee.
Yeah.
So we are the number one e-commerce in Southeast Asia, and I'm not sure. That's what our company says, but I'm not sure whether you follow, but we have been entering the Latin America market. So I think right now we have like, say, Brazil, Mexico. These are the ones that we are, like trying to entering. Like we've entered, I think 1 or 2 years, and like try to build our market over there as well. So it's exciting times, right?
Nice.
A lot of internationalization works have to be done on the front end. Those kind of things. Yeah.
I guess you're not using Svelte yet.
Yeah, we are not.
Oh.
Yeah. So the code base is humongous right now. And actually we are trying to explore something like a micro front end, which is like a way for us to enable developers to allow them to basically split out our like huge code base into smaller pieces and allows individual like feature developers to build and release their features independently, right? So right now we are trying. I'm the one that's setting this up. Basically, try to lay down the foundations, and hopefully we can like break out like smaller pieces of our code to like independent features, and then hopefully like individual developers can choose to say build their features in frameworks that they like and things like that, right? Because it's really hard for us to say if you want to like switch to Svelte and everyone has to change their code base, that does not make sense. And if you want to say have like 2 different kind of frameworks built together at the same time, that's also some sort of overhead. So we like to think that we allow them to build individually, and then we figure a way to piece all them out together. Then the way that you build, you will have to choose. You have more freedom to choose what kind of build tools and stacks that you want to, and we still piece all them together at once. Yeah.
So how does the business feel about that when it's, you're effectively taking your dev team and siloing them into sections of people who would either can or cannot work on a certain part of the code base? Because that's the resistance I've had before with micro front ends, is having you ultimately dilute effectively your pool of developers. And I don't buy it because I think anyone can do anything, but it's a common thing I face.
Yeah. So actually, it's slightly different story on our case. Because our business grows very fast and we actually have to hire a lot, and therefore we couldn't like hire fast enough within our region. So we started hiring from China, and we actually have developers sitting in China. And that's what gets us started thinking about how do we work with them? Like, are we going to allow them to come into our repo and like, make like one changes to the same repository and making the same build together, or should we like figure a mechanism for them to build on their own and then piece it in, right? So that's what gets us started doing that. And then we realized that actually, hey, we also started to have smaller teams that are growing bigger, and So it may the same team may be one day working in like this region, and then suddenly they may be migrated over or handed over to another team and things like that. So right, so we want to have flexibility on like allow us to do that at wills lah, right? So we want to reduce that friction of like who is maintaining the code and does not conflict. I wouldn't say conflict, but like make it easier for them to allow them to have more flexibility in like building and releasing their feature code. That's what we are facing right now. So we definitely we didn't do like micro front ends from the start, and definitely it doesn't make sense if you have a small team and you decide to do something like that. It's definitely because of the business needs and management needs, where they sometimes they decide on the management level, they say, oh, this feature should be handed over to another team because they have more resources over there, and they should hand over some of the features over here because maybe we know it, we can do it better and things like that. And it's not just developer team, right? Because the whole product involves, say, business sides of things, product management, designers, QA engineers, and all those stuff, right? So when they say they want to move it over to a different center, it's actually move the whole entire verticals over. So it's not a small thing to us, you say, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Just to give a size, how many developers are we talking about? How many front-end developers? Are we talking like 100, 1,000?
I mean, for front ends or for
what's the scale of this of the micro front end problem?
Okay, so I guess in terms of the front end right now, basically like right now we are currently working on like this micro front end for just the marketplace, right? So when you talk about like we are the e-commerce, so you have marketplace where we are facing for the buyer. You also have other portals that's facing for the sellers to upload their listings. You have portals for internal users. So right now we are trying this out on the marketplace side, right? And in terms of the size, right now I can't give like the exact figures right over here, but we roughly have, say, 60 over people within Singapore Leuven Center, and then maybe roughly around the same size in China, in Shenzhen office. So that's roughly roughly the size that we have right now, like working on just the marketplace, right? So
the reason I ask is because I think when the micro front end discussion comes up, a lot of people don't see the need for it, and that's just that's mainly because they work in smaller teams than that. And then I definitely tend to see that the companies with larger teams than like 100 or 200 people, they really start to feel the pain. So I want to establish the scale.
Yeah, so imagine this, where we have like every week, if, say, for example, I'm working on my own current branch, and say maybe every Monday I just try to pull all the commits from the master branch, and you will feel the pain because every week at least like more than 1,000 or 2,000 commits merging happening, right? In terms of maybe people make small commits, you may say that, but maybe if you look at like the branches, maybe there will be like 50 to 100 branches merging into master on Monday, because that's what we do every week. We have a weekly cadence of like releasing features. So every Monday, that's where you get everything merging in. That's like 50 to 100. I wouldn't say 100, maybe like roughly 50 for average regular week.
When you've got like 100 branches merging in at once, obviously all of those things have been tested and work in isolation. How do you test the combination of all of those things suddenly?
Yeah, so that's why we have a weekly cadence, because that's where we force like our regressional team to test it like on after we merge everything in. Like we have like maybe 2 days window to test everything, and then every week we just repeat this. Yeah. Wow. So of course, like when you merge, although it sounded like a lot of like branches, and it may sound like a lot of merge conflicts, but it's actually not that way, because like the whole thing is huge. You have all sorts of features working in isolations, right? So it may be people working from like, say, the product page. There are branches from shop page. There's like promotional stuff. There's like checking out stuff, order stuff. So they're actually working in silos, and like the chances of getting merge conflicts is actually not as huge as you would think. But if you work on something more on a fundamental level, then yeah, that is like tragic. You end up with. Yeah. So right now we are like trying our best to like stabilize the core and like think a bit like forward thinking a bit of like what is like the base platform level kind of things, so that when we like grow bigger or start to spin off to smaller micro front ends, we still have like I don't know, control or things like that. So one of the cons that we definitely would foresee is that once everyone starts to spin off like micro front ends, then it's harder to say optimize the whole site as a whole, or make changes or rolling out changes as a whole, that kind of thing. Say for example, if I want to upgrade React, that will be pain, right? I guess that's why there's like React 18, if I'm not mistaken, where you can have like different versions of React running at the same time, because it's too huge now. You can't force everyone to like upgrade at the same time and check all their features are still working fine.
Yeah, I think one of the concepts of micro front ends is that you don't upgrade React, do you? You just kind of upgrade whatever framework section X is using, and you upgrade that framework there, and then you test it. You don't say everyone's going to move to React 18 now.
Yeah. I think, so this sounds like micro front ends are a bit like a Trojan horse to bring in Svelte.
Yeah.
Right?
I hope so.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's like a Trojan horse, I think, isn't it? It's a great way of doing things, because there is no silver bullet. There's no one tool that is the best tool for the job every time for every job. So therefore, micro front ends logically makes a lot more sense, because you're going to use the right tool for the job. Maybe, it makes more sense that part of the site is completely statically rendered. Maybe part of the site needs to be super dynamic using WebSockets, but there's no way that and I've worked on systems that have done trading systems because they've needed WebSockets for like the real-time data. It means that they've gone, well, every single part of the system must use WebSockets now, and implementing login and things that would traditionally be REST with WebSockets is just nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. So I think there's a lot more to micro front ends, and the definition of micro front ends is also wildly different depending on who you talk to. Beyond has micro front ends because every single divisive section of the site is actually a different app, not multiple frameworks on one page, or parts of a view being composed from different services, which is what I've seen in the past. So yeah, I think micro front ends is a weird phrase because it encompasses a little bit too much.
Very, very true. That's very, very true. Yeah, I should have disclaimer before that. Like, I when I say micro front end, I mean this. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. This is one of those. It's quite mismarketed, especially if you go to micro-frontends.org, because this is something that they have. Their prime example is one where 3 different teams, and one team uses Angular, one team uses React, and the third team uses Vue. And they even have like a working demo where they show you all these things in production, but the demo doesn't use any framework. They use web components, which is pretty funny because that's the only way you make it fast, right? Like if you're downloading the runtime for Angular, Vue, and React, you're not really optimizing for users. So I think micro front ends tends to be mismarketed very heavily, and therefore that also makes it hard because people who use it and like it are trying to say one thing, and then the people who don't like it just focus on a different side, which is the obvious negatives. One follow-up I had was Webpack 5 had a lot of fanfare around its support for micro front ends, and I just wanted to ask if that's been helpful for you guys.
Yeah, so when we were starting on like setting up our micro front ends, I think like Webpack 5 wasn't around yet. So definitely we started, I mean, the module federations actually was in discussion. So that's what we seen when we were setting things up. So we obvious work in progress. There's like a proof of concept branch, but then it's not ready yet. So we decided to roll our own. But of course now it's like out. So probably it will be more of like a maintenance kind of thing where we will see how we can swap our build or mechanism, like our fundamentals out. So basically what we have right now is that we have like, we roll our own like, so how does all the micro like individually built apps fit together, or how do we find them? It's like through some sort of like a manifest where you figure out where to download each of them and piece them together, right? So we think probably that would be something that we could. So we have like pieces of like micro front ends. We piece them together, and sometimes they share like common libraries, right? Say for example React. So we want to. right now we roll our own way to say sort of like one of the apps, which is like the main platform, will provide like the React library where it builds with React and provides to all the applications so that you don't have to bundle them together. That's what we do right now. But of course, this can be done with modules federation in a sense where you can say each of them can bundle their own React, but it will be only loaded. So whoever comes in first will load their version of React. But of course, that will also means that we will have to figure a way also to say, make sure that everyone's agree upon like the React version. Or if you are using a different React version, then you will have to say, I don't want to use the so-called shared React and I want to bring in my own React. So these are the things that can be, I guess Webpack can help us out. But right now we kind of like have our own simple way of like injecting like say React into all the applications.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure we mention it because it's a big deal for those people who do micro front ends.
I had no idea.
Oh,
but
yeah,
I have no idea about Webpack.
People are like really excited about it, and I have no use for this, but but if you run into this at work, yeah, you know what federation is about.
We haven't really played with it. Like we just like I just like study about it, but we haven't really like tried it out yet.
All right, so should we talk a bit about Svelte? Your Twitter is full of all these fun tips. Do you have any? Yeah, I think so. Like, it's one of those things where when I log on to check my tweets for the day or for the week, you always have like some nice code examples of stuff that you've done. Like, have you? How do you like figure out what to post there?
Oh, okay. So, to be honest, I don't really post that often. So right now what I have is probably you've been seeing like my older posts. So I have been like retweeting the same thing every few weeks, I guess. Yeah, it's really hard to come up with like good tips, so-called like tips and about Svelte and things like that. So, but of course I can talk about like how I get like inspiration on like how to come up with them, right? So basically once in a while I will be going into this. I don't really do this often, but once in a while I'll just like go into the Discord channel and look through the questions that people are asking there. Actually, it's a very vibrant community right now in the Discord, where actually like I will see that like people are answering people's questions right now, like and every time of the day, right? So it's like it feels like in every part of the world there's people using Svelte and there are people answering people's question and in any time of the day, and it's like it's really amazing right now. So what I did was like there was this week where I basically kind of like finished building up my YouTube channel. So this is something that probably we can talk about it later on. So I kind of like built up the whole tutorial list on my YouTube channel. So I just basically followed like every chapters on the Svelte tutorials and like sort of like make it as like a video version of it. Towards the end of it, I realized that, oh shit, I have no idea what to work on next. So and also I realized that not a lot of people know about my channel. Like I don't really get people to like, how do I get people to know about it, right? So I decided to like say post on Twitter or post it on like say Facebook. And then I realized that if I just post it on Twitter as like a link to the video, not everyone would like interested to click on it. Especially if you ask me, to be honest, I wouldn't click on any video links on Twitter because I was there to scroll. I want to just read text. I don't want to like watch video contents that has sounds in it, right? So I decided that a better way would be create like a tweet version of like the content, like partially, and as well as like supplement with like the video links if you want to watch the video. Right. Yeah. I'm not sure about like how well it's doing because I didn't really look at the analytics of it. But at least like I know like there's some sort of traffic coming on Twitter. But at the same time, I realized that, hey, how about I can do it even more sneakily where I just go into Discord channel and previously I was posting it in just like on the resource channel, right? And then I realized that maybe I should do one step like into the game where I go into the Svelte channel and try to answer questions. And I look at the questions like, oh, actually, you should do this. And if you don't understand this, you should watch my video. So that's like how I try to sneak in my videos. But I didn't really do it consistently. I tried that for maybe a week. That week definitely improves like in terms of subscribers and views and stuff like that. But yeah, I didn't really like get it through every day. It's like I stopped a while, but I guess that's really helpful. Probably I would do that more in future. Yeah. So so tips are actually coming from them.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes sense. But you also do some like when there are some new features, you usually do like a tweet series where you show like the new. I remember you did like the fragments feature a while back.
Yeah,
you did like a tweet series of that.
Yeah. So the thing about
nice.
this is that I realized that I'm not that consistent. So like there was a few versions of Svelte that I tried to like make a tweet on like what is new in this version, but then after a while it's like I just like didn't follow through. Yeah,
happens.
But definitely like if you like it, definitely I will try to do it more often. Yeah,
I think consistency is why I don't have like a blog or a YouTube channel or a big Twitter following, because I'm just not consistent at all. It just really depends on the mood during the day. So can't really blame you for that at all.
I'm kind of the same as well.
It's hard. It's hard. I have to say it's really hard.
I think the podcast, for example, like I probably wouldn't do it if Sean and Anthony didn't do it with me, because I would just be lazy and not do anything.
That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, but also you make it possible with all the scheduling. Exactly. Like, for those who don't know, Kevin does all the scheduling and the uploading, and we just show up every time he schedules something.
Yeah, right. We have the easiest job here.
But yeah, creating anything is hard, and keeping it up is it's definitely a commitment. You have to have a bigger reason, I think, which is why we're interested in why Li Hau is working on the YouTube, right? Even though he doesn't use Svelte at work, like what motivates you?
Yeah, so I have to say like the tutorial on Svelte it's really amazing. It's like a lot of people learn Svelte from there. Myself included, I learned it from like trying out the tutorials and basically learn out all the how to use the logic blocks and how to use components, props, and things like that, right? But when I see like people asking questions about Svelte, I realize that there's also places that there's like rooms to improvement, but I'm not really sure like how to improve it on the tutorial itself, because like it's concise for a reason. It's like it's a good place to get started. But of course, after a while, you might hit something that it's like maybe edge cases and things like that, especially say, for example, like reactivity and stuff like that. It's a bit hard to just explain it in few words, or maybe like explain it. Even I don't feel myself comfortable even explaining it in like say a blog, for example, right? Sometimes it's better to explain by looking at visuals. Right, so I guess that's why I also sometimes like post like say snippets of code, say like a very simple code that like when you look at it you kind of understands, right? But then sometimes you want to compare a few code samples, right? Say like this is working, this is not, and this is working, and you change this line and this is not, right? If you make it like a code snippet like on Twitter or like on a blog post, you have to scroll up and down or switching between stuff. Right, but if you're watching a video, it's like you're playing it in motion, and you able to like see how it plays out and things like that. So I realized that actually maybe a better way of explaining things would be creating like a video. But to be honest, myself, I don't really like watching videos. Like I'm more of a trying out myself kind of guy. So I try to do that in my video as well, where I'm like trying out for you. Right, so if you want to like say, I try to explain things in a way where say, let's see what happens if I comment this line out, or what if I add this line in, and how why it behaves in a certain way and things like that, right? So that is a thing that usually it's very, very hard to like find it in like an article to explain that to you, right? Sometimes they explain the big picture, but like nitty gritty stuff that you have to actually play it out yourself to actually feel it sometimes. Right, and I try to do that. I'm not sure whether I succeedingly doing it in my video, but I'm trying to do a video that is like trying things out for you, and you can watch it if you are lazy to try things yourself. Right, so that's what I try to do in my video. So I try to like go through the tutorials in a sense where I try to like go through every chapters and things like that. As I said just now, like it's very hard to be consistent. So I decided, like, say, instead of like going like pick a topic and talk about it and things like that, I decided to just stick with like a schedule, which is like the tutorial list. So I just go through every topic in the tutorial so that I have to like follow through everything. And it's also good in a sense where it follows in a flow where the later part of the, like, say, my playlist, they actually refers back to things that I talked before, right? Because tutorials actually build it that way, right? You learn things by step along the way. So now I have like, hopefully I have like a collection of contents where basically if you want to know about something, there's always something to refer to, and that makes it easier to explain things to people as well, right? I can always like send them a link, say, hey, just watch this. I've created some content about that.
Yeah, I really like them. I specifically like the ones on stores, like the derived stores, for example, and the custom stores. Those were really nice, because I didn't really realize that the derived stores were as complex as they were. I had no idea. Like, well, I did have some idea about what you could do, but like, for example, when you pass in like an array of stores, and like there are all these like combinations of things that isn't apparent from just reading the tutorial or even the API.
Yeah, so the documentation does says that you can pass in an array or stars, or you can have like two arguments, like whether you have a set like a asynchronous derived store and things like that, right? So what I did was just try to like be like trying out for you. I tried to like draw it out like a 2x2 matrix. Like, okay, you have like a one store with like synchronous, multiple stores with synchronous, and one stores that's like asynchronous, and multiple stores is like, just try out all the different versions of things. And yeah, so that's how like I try to structure my video in that way, that just try out all the possibilities that you can think of and see this is how it would behave, things like that. Yeah.
It's weird because I use stores quite a lot, but I always struggle to find a use for the readable store. I just don't. I always try and make one to start with, try and keep it simple and encapsulated, and then a little bit later on, I just end up having to make it writable in the end. It's just every time.
Yeah, I realized that readable stores, unless you have something very atomic, I guess, like some things that change itself, then it's a readable. But if you want something that will be changed later on, most of the times you slowly realize that you want to change it from the outside, or change it somewhere else, or change it like it's you have other factors that you want to change it. In the end, you realize that maybe writable is something that you want, and it's much easier to change it, right? Because readable is like when you create the stars, you have to have a way to really have like design a way to change it from the inside,
which is generally down to having like a timer or a set interval or something in it.
Yeah. That's true.
I was wondering if we want to go through some of your favorite tips, just from your backlog of content. what have been some of your favorite questions or discoveries as you go through and answer questions?
You mean like my favorite videos?
Or tips, right? Like, because you do tweet threads with these answers.
Okay, so this is me judging based on number of like likes and tweets and response on the videos. I mean, to be honest, I don't really have a particular, like, it doesn't occur to me in a way that I see this, I like, oh, I want to create a content about this, and I prepare content and realize that, okay, this is gonna be viral and things like that. It doesn't occur to me this way yet. Like, I don't have a viral eyes or like ways to detect viral content, right? So it's just me that trying to come up with a content to explain certain things, and some goes off and some just like, yeah. So I realized that the ones that is about how do you actually call a functions from a parent component. I guess that one is, call a function inside a component from the parent. I guess that's one of the videos that a lot of people or that tweets. I tweeted it as well. I tweeted the content as well, and I realized that is one of those that a lot of people like about.
That's interesting.
I guess people didn't realize that you can call like functions inside. Like, if you export a function from a Svelte component, it actually turns into like a methods for your component instance. I guess that's like it's not explained in anywhere, and somehow it just works that way. And like, yeah, it's always like a revelation to people, I guess. That's why.
That's interesting. That's not what I would have guessed, I think.
Yeah. So I guess the other one that people would like to learn about is the contextual. I think when to use a context or a store. It was like a one of those videos about store, and a lot of people ask these questions where when should you use a context, when should you use a store. I think that one is pretty nice as well. Like as in a lot of people are like having good comments on that as well. So yeah, so my answer to that would be like they're actually solving different problems that's a lot of people didn't aware about, that you can use context alone, or you can use store alone, or you can use context and store together, or and there's again, it's like to me, I try to draw it as a 2x2 matrix again, where if no context with store, context with no store, context with store, and no context and no store. There's always like there's 4 different kinds of ways to communicate from like one component to your, say, children component or other components, right? So like I try to break it down that way and see why or what are the reasons that you want to use one or the other, and what can like how and I try to come up with examples that can fit all 4 different kinds of scenarios, where you see how it will behave differently if you just use one or the other or both. Yeah.
I have a confession, which is I've never used context.
Oh,
wow.
You're in for a treat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
They're
to be honest, like
nice.
it doesn't really. It really depends on whether you need it or not, right? So maybe if you
for sure.
don't have something that you want to pass down you don't want a scenario where whatever components goes under that tree to receives that value, and or receives a different value when the component is being under a different component tree, then you wouldn't need context, right? So that's these kind of scenarios are not that often. I would say, like, it's not like always you find the scenarios that you need that, right?
Yeah. I think so. I implemented like a tabs and a tab component a couple of weeks back, and then instead of like using the what's it called, the like the slot props thing, you can just so you don't have to, like, I don't know how to explain this, but like it was a nice way of using the context. Instead of
so you have your tab content, where if it's inside this tab component, it will communicate with this tab, right? If it's in the other component, you will communicate to that tab component, right? So you need to know like where you are in. That's when you would think about using context.
I like that you were better at explaining what I did than I, and I implemented it, so that's good.
Yeah, I think I also learn by experimentation rather than actually understanding the concepts. It makes much more sense to me if I can see the result, like Li Hau was talking about. When you're changing something and you're removing a line and see what happens. It's
nice.
Have you done anything on SvelteKit?
No, no. One simple answer, no. So no very strong reason why. It's just that it's a lot of people are working on it right now, so things move very fast, I would say. So, and usually they moves in, I would say, roughly like a New York time zone. Like things move fast in a sort of like US time zone. So
yeah, that's true.
Right? So new issues come out in that time zone and it fixes at the same time, that kind of thing. So it's usually like things that lives for the next day that I can wake up and look, like if that issue lives longer to the fact that I would wake up in Singapore time and saw it, usually it's something that I'm not sure I could even able to fix it. So I just like leave it as it is, and it's fixed the next day, right? So yeah, I didn't really participate in like the SvelteKit development.
I think that's GitHub Copilot. I think it's just automatically fixing bugs it finds. It's very good like that.
So making YouTube videos, that's not something I've ever really done. Is it fun? Are you finding it to be rewarding? Do you like doing it?
Yeah, sure. I would say it's fun when you're on a high where you are like constantly coming out with content, right? So at the point where during a period where I was just like following on the tutorials, where just like, okay, this is my goal. By the end of this month, I want to do the whole tutorials things, right? So every day I have like, okay, this is what I'm going to do next, if, right? So tonight I'm going to do if, tomorrow I'm going to do each, and the next day I'm going to do a weight. So that everything is planned out, and it's very fun to just like coming out with content. After that, it's like, oh, I need a new goal or new aim or new target where I would like spend, maybe right now, in my case, I would spend like maybe during the week to work on, like, to come up with ideas and maybe record it during the weekend. But then that creates another problem where during weekdays, if I don't do anything, I don't have anything for the weekend, and then I will like procrastinate and wait it for the next week. And then after a while, it just like cools down and I don't feel like doing videos. But when I'm like on a run, then it's just talking and like making stuff. Like, if you notice my video, I didn't really do a lot of editing, so it's less work to me, where I'm just like sort of semi live coding, where I think of like I have a draft of like, okay, this is like an example that I need to come up with. Maybe I have sometimes I show it on a separate screen. Sometimes I write it once and then I delete it, so it's still in my memory, and I do it like immediately, like recording it as a video, right? So I don't need a lot. I didn't do a lot of editing, like record it and press record and like talk through the whole thing and just make sure the audio sounds okay. And I did a very simple like transition in terms of video where you see my face first and then it will shrink to the corner, but that's all the extent of like the video editing that I'm doing. So that's like, I don't really do like subtitles and stuff. I tried once and realized that on one of the video, and I realized that it's so boring. It takes me maybe a 5-minute videos of me speaking will have to have me like maybe more than 10 minutes to like subtitle it. Maybe more, even more than that, like maybe half an hour to just type everything out in text, right? That's where I realized that I'm not going to do subtitles. I guess it's also to the extent or same reasoning of I'm not writing any blog posts right now, because like writing things down and you realize that you need to be grammatically correct and like flow goes through and things like that. If you are just speaking, you just speak at your heart's will, and I guess people are more forgiving listening to people than like reading, right? So in that sense, it's quite fun for me to just like talk through and then record and upload, and then there you go. So it's not a lot of work on my side at this moment right now.
That makes sense to me. Like I think I'm very much the same. Like the parts of the podcast that I think are fun is the actual recording part, right? The editing is not fun, so I don't do it. It's
that's the reason I don't YouTube at all, is because the editing is just I just can't stand it.
I guess I should mention Descript, which is an app that matches your transcription to your video. And if I was going to do that's the tool that I would use. Yeah, but it is still a lot of work, but I think people are using AI to make it slightly easier.
Yeah, okay. So I think I use a similar, for the transcripts for the podcast, I use something called Otter AI. So it's something similar. But it's still like you say, it's still a lot of work. You still have to correct things. The AI doesn't understand some term. It's all over the place.
We used one that was like mostly right, but then made some weird mistakes, didn't it? Were these services advertising themselves as a fully machine-driven service, or were they advertising themselves as a fully human-driven service, or were they suggesting that they get the machine to do most of the work and then get a human to run over it?
So for the first few transcripts, I paid for the like both the editing and the transcripts. And I think those transcripts were pretty decent. But then I think I figured out it was just too expensive, that editing service. So we switched to another one that didn't have transcription. And then I decided to try that Otter.ai thing. And that basically just does the machine learning AI.
Oh, it doesn't have any humans at all?
No, you have to go through it and like match the speaker with the... It's pretty good at guessing, but sometimes it gets things wrong.
Yeah, so YouTube has a pretty good auto subtitles, right? If you choose subtitles, because when I upload it, I chose it to be like, I specified that I'm speaking English, and there's a auto subtitles where you can choose that will come out. And find it like it's quite good. It's just that if I want to make it like perfect, I would have to go in and edit it myself, and then like I can like YouTube already generate that and I can edit it, but to go in and edit myself and change every characters that is like incorrect, it will be like a hassle, and I decided not to do that. Especially when I'm not pronouncing Svelte correctly, like that is always wrong.
I mean, that was the perfect pronunciation there. So just maybe like when you talk about it, just stop and say Svelte.
That's actually that's something I always have to like correct in the transcripts. Actually,
really,
like, right?
Yeah, yeah, and some weird like technical terms. But anyway, right. Should we talk a bit about like your contributions to Svelte? Like you've been working a bit lately on the what's the RFC called? Is it the const?
No idea. Const expression, constant tank. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a new logic block thing, right? Kind of.
It's not or really a logic. Thing. It's
more like a template syntax.
I guess you can. I don't really even know like how to say it. So it's the way that you write it. It's more like a tag where we have right now we have two tags. We have the HTML. So you have curly brackets, add, and then HTML where you can put in HTML content. You have a debug tag where you can add debug, and then you put in an expression, and every time the expression changes, you will see a console log. Or if you open your DevTools, you will have a debugger breaking at the right position, right? So right now we have, this is like a new one, which is a const, C-O-N-S-T. Although we have discussion about like the naming itself, but it's going nowhere. So I'm just gonna leave it as like const. I'm just gonna call it const tag because it's a tag, because it's just like HTML tag or debug tag, right? So what it does is that sometimes this is one of the thing that you would encounter. For example, if you're doing say a weight, or you're doing each, what happens when you are iterating through something, right? Of course you can deconstruct whatever you're iterating through, right? The items. But after that, you also sometimes you want to say calculate something, like come out with a local variable that is depending on whatever the item that you're iterating through, right? Say maybe you have each array of items, and then you want to calculate like say items total equals to items dot price times items dot amount, right? Some things like that, right? You want to have a total where you can use it in multiple places, right? So if you have one place to use it, of course you just have a curly brackets and say items dot amounts times items of price, right? But if you have a few times, you realize that you want to have like sort of like a local variables, and this is where the const tag comes in, where you can say, hopefully we'll say add const and then total equals to item dot price times items dot quantity, and then you can use that total in like the local scope. So it's like declaring a local variable in places where it makes sense, right? For example, each, or you have awaits because you awaits promise dent, and then you have like a local place where you want to calculate local stuff, or you have say a component, and then you have a slot props coming in like a let's binding, and then you want to derive something over there. If you use it elsewhere, it actually doesn't really make sense, because you can always define that variable outside, because you're not creating a new scope within the template, right? So we are going to, the idea would be like adding like places where you can add more local variables within the HTML templates.
It's super useful actually, because I do find myself needing that on a fairly regular basis. I end up calling methods, and it's not quite the same calling a method, because sometimes it's not reactive in the way you'd expect it to be. Question definitely for the audience here, because I totally know, because I'm a maintainer, right? Why are certain of those squiggly bracket tags, as we're going to professionally call them, why are some of them, why do they have an at, and why do some of them have a hash? What defines whether it's a hash or an at?
To be honest, I don't know. I would say like
okay, that's good. Yeah. I don't feel so bad now.
But I feel like probably, okay, so to be honest, like me, I don't really like, although I say I'm one of the maintainers, but I don't really like my role. Like what I do most of the times, if you notice, is mainly triaging issues, fixing stuff, and like implementing stuff that people propose, right? I rarely propose new things, unless it's like things that relates to how to fix certain things that makes things feels more correct. most of the time when you have new syntax or things like that, actually, at the end of the day, we all look at Rich and hopes that he has an answer to things, right? So I would say like he dictates the style and the taste of the language itself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I have to guess, you realize that maybe anything that starts with a hash, it's more for like a logic blocks. At least right now, what we have is like the if, each, and await, and everything else. I don't know why, but it's a at, right? And how, yeah. At least that is how it is right now. Yeah. So why key? I don't know. Right. So
I mean, so I think.
Yeah, someone proposed it and just implement it, but I have no idea like why. I would say like at least to my eyes it doesn't feel wrong. So
yeah. I think it makes sense. I mean, it kind of seems right for a debug because it's not something that really lives inside the code. It's not like it doesn't affect template output, for example, or it shouldn't do. But then HTML really does, so it's kind of confusing. And I wonder if it's to do with one is a rendering concern and one is almost like an escape hatch. It does something more logical rather than visual. I don't know. I think you're right though. Like Rich is definitely the vision behind Svelte. Has always was and still is. There are actually very few maintainers who understand the full code base. There's not actually many people who understand that, and it's a known thing. It's quite a complex thing to get your head around. And I think the other thing is, like you say, you and I are both maintainers, but I certainly joined because I was treasuring a lot of bugs and answering questions and doing sort of stuff that was like housework around the issues. It's very rare that I contribute actual code to the code base, although I have done a fair bit on SvelteKit. And it's also pretty rare that I will end up defining a new language, a new function, like a new language feature or something like that, because it's generally a lot of the things that I see for Svelte come from a place of, oh, I need this thing, it's just me who needs it, versus Rich is more thinking of web dev as a whole needs this function, maybe this needs this feature. So yeah, it's all about depending on how people think and stuff like that.
Yeah. So a small thing to add on that would be definitely it's not something about the parser or compiler about like why we chose hash instead of an add or like why this or that, right? It's definitely, yeah. I mean, we wrote the whole compiler and the parser, so definitely it's more like the taste of like the maintainers or Rich himself to feel like this should be read this way and not the other, and the whole the look and feel of the language itself.
There's a lot of classification that goes on like that, especially naming and stuff. And we know that naming is one of the hardest problems in computing, and I think that this goes on with it as well. There's a lot of consideration goes into every directive, every tag name, every built-in, every attribute that goes into the Svelte DSL. So yeah, there'll be a purpose for it. We just don't know what that purpose is between us.
Yeah. That reminds me of something that was discussed recently about the $$ dispatch. So this was this thing where I think a lot of people has this pain, or me, I particularly has had this pain when I was like working on videos about event dispatcher, where I have to, every time when I was working on that video, I have to say import create event dispatcher and create a dispatch function, right? Yeah. So would it be better that we have like a $$ dispatch that will just automatically do that instead, right? And of course we are still in discussion, but then like Rich has his own reasoning about like what should be a $$ like variables and what shouldn't be, and like he has his own like reasoning and all this. If you ask me, I would say, oh, if it works, it works, right? Like I don't really, I didn't really think that far ahead. Like it's a shorthand, why not, right? Things like that. But he actually has his own reasoning behind like when you should add certain things and why certain things should be added and why certain things shouldn't. Yeah, things like that.
And it's that clarity, it's that exactness and clarity of the API that makes Svelte as good as it is. So I think it's a really critical part of Svelte, and it's something that a lot of other languages don't bother with too much, or not to the extent that Svelte does. The API is very clean and easy to understand for that reason. The $$ thing is, as I remember it vaguely, $$ is generally used for internal things that that may change. So I don't know if $$ dispatch will actually become a thing, and then a single dollar is obviously used for non-internal things, but also for stores. And I think with sort of thinking around how we would change things if there were to be a Svelte 4 or when we work towards Svelte 4, that would be probably considering should the $$ in a store be at the end of the store,
Did I hear
the store name.
Did I hear
bit like
Svelte 4?
RxJS. It's definitely not anytime soon, but certainly it's one of those things that you think about. Breaking changes should not be going into Svelte 3 at this point, right? So they get automatically shoved into this imaginary thing called Svelte 4, and one of those things would be the store syntax. Is the dollar at the start sensible and logical, or is dollar at the end going to be the way that stores work in the future?
Yep. All right. Cool. Do we have any other questions for Li Hau before we move on to unpopular opinions? No? All right. Unpopular opinions. Ooh, does anyone have one?
Got
I don't. Nope, me neither. I'm all out.
All out as well.
Do you have one, Li Hau?
Yeah, sure. Definitely. Definitely will be my YouTube channel. That will be my own my picks.
Yeah, that's not an unpopular opinion, though.
So popular opinion.
So we're going into picks now. So you're picking your YouTube channel then, right? Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, do subscribe. I don't know. It got all those. I try to. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Of course, sometimes I may not be that responsive. I try my best to juggle between work and like making videos and stuff, and be more consistent and more social within social media and stuff like that. But I'll try to answer your questions, and also if that happens a lot, I would just try to create videos about it. So I have this just now I talk about like I have a playlist of doing all the tutorials, right? But I also have a playlist that just answer about Svelte questions. So I call it like a Svelte question time, where I like have basically each of the video covers one question about certain things, like a small question, and like I'll try to go in and explain like how you should do something, or what's your thought process that you should go in to things about things like that, right? So let me like list a few. Would be like, say, like how do you create like a dynamic elements, or how do you call functions inside components, or calling functions outside a component, like calling a function from a parent component, or how do you even communicate from two components without using even like store props or context. So everything from Svelte is all the way, but you still want two components to communicate with each other. Then how would you do it? Right. And I think recent ones that a lot of people are asking will be, how do you actually use store inside a JavaScript file? Like store magically works in a Svelte component where you use a dollar prefix and it works. But how do you actually use it outside of a Svelte component? Right. So explore like two different approaches to two different kind of scenarios. Right. So be sure to check that out. It'll be an interesting one. So yeah, that will be my pick.
Yep.
It's a good pick. Good
cool.
pick. I like it.
Yep, I like it as well. Anthony, do you have one?
So my pick is a pretty easy one here. It's the Peloton treadmill. Essentially, like this.
Is that the one behind?
Well, no. I've actually, the cycle trainer is now folded up in the corner, so that's now out of the way. There's now a big gap here next to me. I've got a weights bench that's folded up. It's all just folded up because there's not enough room in this house for all the stuff I have, basically. But no, the Peloton treadmill, I'm not a runner. I don't really enjoy running at all. My wife loves it, so it's her treadmill. She bought it. And it replaced a sofa in our living room because we didn't have room if we had the sofa still. So we dropped one sofa and put a treadmill there, which is not anything like as comfortable to sit on, I can tell you. However, she said, "Oh, you should try it. You'll love it. You'll begin to like it." And I was like, "I'm a cyclist. I'm not a runner. I don't do running." And then I started running a bit on it because it's kind of there. You've got no real choice because it's quite a big thing and it's quite dominating. And it's quite an expensive thing as well. So I feel like I might as well just get some use out of it. And actually, I really, really enjoy it. I'm probably running at least 3-4 times a week now, maybe on it.
Wow.
It doesn't take long. You can do like 15-20 minutes. You can do 5 minutes if you want to, and get a reasonably good workout from it. The reason I think I like it is because I find running like a hamster in a wheel. It's kind of just laborious. It's very hard work, which is fantastic exercise, but it's really hard work. And for me to do for 20 minutes, it's really hard work consistently with no entertainment is kind of dull.
You can listen to Svelte podcasts for that 20 minutes.
I could, yeah.
Radio.
That sometimes works, but then my brain thinks, well, why aren't you just sitting down listening to the podcast or having a beer or something, right? There's something that has to be like a connection between the activity of running and you actually, your brain being entertained by something which is connected to what you're doing. That for me makes the time pass quicker, right? And I think Peloton have somehow in their classes, that maybe the instructors or whatever have nailed that. So their instructors are really entertaining. They talk nonsense. They talk a lot of rubbish, really. But what they do is they talk in a way that's kind of engaging, and it's engaging to do with the activity you're doing. And so a run like this 20 minutes, you can feel like it's over in like 10 minutes, maybe less. It's really quite impressive. So yeah, I think I'm kind of sold on it, really. I think anyone who's thinking of getting one and hasn't done, I would get it, because it's actually a really good device.
Well, it sounds great.
I guess it's my turn. I watched the Chef movie last night, and it was really good. I've seen it before, but it's a small little, I guess, indie film with Jon Favreau and Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson. It's a pretty star-studded cast, and I think it's an allegory for Jon Favreau's life, kind of working through some of the issues that he faced running the Marvel movies. And if you want to see, really good food and just have a nice, heartwarming story, I think it's a good show overall. I recommend it. It's on Netflix.
Sounds like my kind of movie, that, actually.
Yeah, I love food movies. Yeah, so I didn't have a pick, but then the treadmill discussion spawned one. So in Barcelona, there's this group called Beer Runners. The way it works is, I think you have a beer and then you run for a while to the next place, and then you have another beer, and then you just do that a couple of times. I haven't done that yet, but it sounds like fun because I love running. So
okay.
When and if I go to Barcelona, that's definitely something I'm gonna do. But we'll see.
I think we do that a lot on cycling, right? We cycle to pub kind of thing in the countryside. That's quite fun, actually. I do enjoy that. Try not to get too drunk at pubs, because it's difficult drinking and cycling.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a novelty thing, right? It's
Sure.
not like you're going to do it to get drunk. That would be very weird.
It's not replacement for a night out, for sure.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it. Thank you for coming on, Li Hau. Where can people find you?
You can always find me on my YouTube channel again. No, you can also follow me on Twitter at Li Hau Tan, and I register the same name for my YouTube channel as well. So it's if you go to youtube.com/Li Hau Tan, it works as well. That will land to my channel. So yeah, that will be the places you can find me.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.